It all began during the season when the Harmattan winds swept through the land, leaving a dry, dusty veil over the village of Ejiro. It was the time when hunters ventured deep into the forest to bring back meat for the festivities. Bantu, the village's most renowned hunter, was eager to prove himself once again. Bantu was a man of towering stature, his muscles hardened from years of traversing the dense forest. He had the keenest eye in Ejiro, able to spot the faintest rustle of leaves that hinted at prey. His hunting prowess had earned him respect and admiration, but it had also planted a seed of pride deep within him. He believed himself untouchable, favored by the gods of the hunt. One morning, as the villagers gathered at the square, the town crier beat his drum to summon everyone. "Our stores are low," the crier announced, "and the forest is calling to the brave." Bantu smirked. He didn't need the forest to call him. He lived for the hunt. Before setting off, his wife, Enkem, tried to caution him. "Bantu," she said softly, "remember to thank the forest spirits before you enter their domain. You have taken much this season." "Be careful," Bantu laughed. "Enkem, I am the best hunter in Ejiro. The spirits know me well. They will not begrudge me my success." He kissed her cheek and picked up his bow, arrows, and machete. The forest of Irawa was vast and mysterious. Its trees towered high, their branches intertwining to form a canopy that barely let sunlight through. It was said that the forest had a soul, and that it watched over all who entered. Some elders whispered that the forest had a voice, but only the humble could hear it. As Bantu ventured deeper, he spotted a herd of antelope grazing in a clearing. He crouched low, his steps silent. Pulling an arrow from his quiver, he took aim and released. The arrow struck true, and the largest antelope fell. Bantu's chest swelled with pride, but instead of stopping there, he continued. The day was still, young, and his skill unmatched. He moved from one clearing to another, hunting down more animals than he could carry. By evening, he had killed enough to fill 3 men's baskets. His eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he looked at his haul. As he prepared to leave the forest, something unusual happened. The shadows cast by the setting sun seemed to shift and stretch unnaturally. Bantu dismissed it as his imagination and began to drag his game back to the village. But the feeling of being watched persisted. He glanced over his shoulder repeatedly, but saw nothing. Yet, he couldn't shake the sensation that something was following him. When he reached the village, the people gasped at the sheer amount of meat he brought back. They cheered and clapped, calling him a hero. Bantu basked in the adoration. That night, as the village feasted, Bantu sat by the fire, recounting his hunt with exaggerated flair. But as the flames danced, casting flickering shadows on the walls, he saw something that made his heart skip. Among the shadows was one that did not belong, a figure crouching behind him, mimicking his movements. He turned sharply, but nothing was there. Shaking his head, he blamed his tiredness. "The hunt has taken more out of me than I thought," he muttered. Over the next few days, Bantu began to notice strange occurrences. No matter where he went, the unnatural shadow followed. At first, it stayed at the edge of his vision, disappearing whenever he turned to look. But soon, it became bolder, standing beside him, mirroring his actions. The villagers didn't seem to notice it, but Bantu couldn't ignore it. He went to the village priest, an elderly man named Baba Udo. "Baba," Bantu said, his voice trembling, "something follows me, a shadow that is not mine." Baba Udo's face grew serious. He sprinkled kola nut powder on the ground and studied the patterns it formed. "Bantu," he said gravely, "you have offended the spirits of the forest. You have taken more than you need, and now the forest has sent a shadow to remind you of your greed." Bantu frowned. "But I am a hunter. It is my duty to provide for the village, and it is also your duty to respect the balance." Baba Udo replied, "You must make amends. Return to the forest and offer a sacrifice. Seek the forgiveness of the spirits." Reluctantly, Bantu agreed. Early the next morning, he ventured back into the forest, carrying a basket of kola nuts, palm wine, and a rooster. He walked to the clearing where he had made his largest kill and knelt. "Spirits of Irawa," he began, "forgive my arrogance and greed. I have taken more than I should. Accept these offerings and show mercy." The forest was silent. Bantu's voice echoed among the trees, but there was no response. He left the offerings and returned to the village, hoping it was enough. For a time, the shadow seemed to disappear, and Bantu believed the ordeal was over. But one evening, as he sat with his family, the shadow returned, larger and darker than before. It stood silently in the corner of his hut, its presence, oppressive. Fear gripped Bantu. He fell to his knees and cried out, "What do you want from me?" The shadow remained motionless, but a voice soft and mournful filled the room. "Respect the land that feeds you, or you will lose everything you hold dear." The next day, Bantu went to Baba Udo again. The priest instructed him to gather the villagers and share his story. "The spirits want you to teach others. Only then will they be appeased." That evening, Bantu stood in the village square and told his tale. He spoke of his pride, his greed, and the shadow that haunted him. The villagers listened intently, and many vowed to honor the forest's balance. As Bantu finished his story, the shadow appeared once more. But this time, it did not linger. It bowed slightly, then dissolved into the night. Bantu became a humble man. Bantu became a humble man. He taught young hunters to take only what was needed and to always give thanks to the spirits of the forest. The shadow never returned, but its lesson remained etched in the hearts of the villagers of Ed.